So, guys, I do want to talk about AEW, and I really think that the past couple of weeks and even next week kind of really demonstrates why Blood and Guts should be a pay per view. Like, honestly, the match between Will Ospreay and MJF was definitely a bit of a controversial match to have, and it was also a match that I feel would have been good for like a Wembley Stadium or a Blood and Guts pay per view. So I was telling myself that I think the reason why I say that is because obviously when you give a match like that away on free television, even if it was your 250th show, it's not really worth it because it's almost like it comes out of nowhere, really. And I would also say that, definitely you should really profit off of this because I like what Mark Henry said that when they had Kenny Omega versus MJF, and that was a really banger of a match. What would have happened if AEW decided to just have a pay per view in October at the MGM Arena, and then just do it like that and make some money? Really, sometimes if you have these banger matches and it feels like you can make a pay per view off of it, definitely do it. So I do want to talk a little bit about some fantasy booking. That honestly, they have Battle of the Belts, and if they advertise Battle of the Belts as a show where anybody can lose their title, and that's going into Wembley Stadium season. That would be interesting. So what would happen if you took the Battle of the Belts show you're going to have next weekend at Collision, and then you put that onto a pay-per-view? Like, these people are going to be defending their titles, 4 or 5 people, including MJF and Will Ospreay. And then you have, like, let's say you took four people that have titles and they're defending their titles. And then you have Will Ospreay versus MJF, and they go for an hour. And then you have the Blood and Guts match, the 5-on-5 really. You start with MJF versus Will Ospreay, then you have these championship matches, and then you end with the Blood and Guts match. But you do something where you say, okay, well, the pay-per-view, it has to be 4 hours maximum. And we also have to kind of make sure it's not a situation where we make it like a 5-hour show or 6-hour show. Because if you're going to have 2 1-hour matches on a show, you have to make sure that 100% that, you don't have too many other matches. Because if you do that, it's going to burn out your audience. So I think that would have been really good. And then the other issue is that there is some rumor speculation online that AEW wants to do a show in Texas, 100,000 people. And with 100,000 people, if you want to get a 100,000 seat arena, you have to make a good Texas show. And I do feel like they're going to do the EP Sports Arena, and they're going to have Ring of Honor. I'm not sure if they're sold out, but they have a $55 ticket price. The only match that they have is Mark Briscoe versus Roderick Strong, Athena versus Queen Aminata, and Red Velvet versus Billy Starks. For the super fans, that's a really great show. But for regular people, who the hell are those people? All I know is Athena because she worked in WWE, really. Maybe Roderick Strong because he has some notoriety from working on the independent scene. But otherwise, that doesn't seem like a good show. Also, this week, coming on Collision, you're going to have the Patriarch versus Bullet Club Gold. Wouldn't that make sense for a pay-per-view? So if you had the Blood and Guts pay-per-view, you could have had the Blood and Guts match, MJF versus Will Ospreay, a couple of championship matches, including the ROH title. Even if you, like the Young Bucks could say, you have to defend it at the pay-per-view, make an unfair decision, and Mark Briscoe has to do two matches. And the stipulation that they throw in is that if their team loses, the ROH title becomes vacated. They can just throw in something like that to make it unfair. And then the next thing is that you could have had the Patriarch versus Bullet Club Gold, because that would be a really great match. The fact that they're doing it this weekend and next week is Battle of the Belts is extremely, extremely stupid of AEW. But I do understand that they're trying to make every show mean something, So I really think that, as I said, that, a lot of people feel Blood and Guts would be a better pay-per-view match. And then the other thing about Blood and Guts is that it's not appropriate for a television show, because the problem is if you put it on television, as Cornette said, you can't make a wrestling show MA. The other thing too is that it limits the amount of violence you can put into it, and then ultimately, if you're thinking about sponsors and other things like that, they may not be happy if they watch, like somebody's face being stapled, or somebody using a pizza cutter, or stuff you did in the exploding barbed wire death match. They would probably say, okay, guys, we understand that this is your concept, but you have to tone it down, really. There's reasons why you don't see a Hell in a Cell match on WWE television. I believe they've done that maybe like 2 or 3 times, but a majority of them have been on pay-per-views, because if they want to go far, they can go far, really. So it's definitely, food for thought, really. I think that if they had the Blood and Guts pay-per-view and they had it in either Nashville or definitely Texas, this would actually been a way better usage. You could have had the Blood and Guts match. You could have had MJF versus Will Ospreay. You could have had the Patriarch versus Bullet Club Gold. You could have had a couple of title matches. Like you said, like Mark Briscoe has to defend his title. We're going to do that with the ROH people as well, just to kind of, do something where you say, okay, you know what, this is a big deal for Athena versus Queen Aminata. The person who has the streak versus the person who wants to, be that young up and comer. The queen of ROH versus the new queen type of thing. Really, you could have had Billy Starks try to prove herself. And you could have had a couple more matches, really. You could have had an 8-card show. And I think that would have done a lot better. And then the other thing is, as I said, the EP Sports Arena, I think they said that's a maximum of 3,000 people. Why the hell would you want to have 2 shows and draw like 6,000 people, charge $55 for that? Wouldn't you want to just rent out a big, decent size arena, draw a big crowd, knowing that you draw big in Texas, and then just have those matches? Or even if you said something like, you know what, we want to even get the AT&T Arena, we want to have like a big penultimate show of Wembley Stadium. We want to kind of bring it to Texas, and then you do a good showing there, and then actually you create some momentum, and then you create something like MJF wins, and then Daniel Garcia comes down. And they're going to have a match at Wembley Stadium. Just be like, okay, Daniel Garcia is going to take on MJF, who can cheat. He can have 1-hour matches. He can do all these things, really. So Daniel Garcia has to be that Benoit type of wrestler, or that Rey Mysterio, or that Bryan Danielson, like the underdog, trying to make it establish himself. Or you could do something like, it's almost like, okay, I'm not sure what happens to Pac, because I believe Pac is challenging for the Intercontinental title or the Continental title. What would happen if you had Okada also defend his title? Or even like in Blood and Guts, you had Pac come down and he helped out a little bit because the EPs were cheating, and then he kind of like said, you know what, this shit's not going to happen, really. I'm sick and tired of you cheaters. And you get him over as a babyface. So you do Pac versus Okada. What would have happened if you had Mark Briscoe and he had a match with Roderick Strong, and then what happens is that Roderick Strong shakes his hand, the Undisputed Kingdom come down, they have drinks and whatever, and then what happens is that Adam Cole like smashes a champagne bottle on the back of his head, and then they have a match at Wembley Stadium, ROH title, Adam Cole versus Mark Briscoe. There's a lot of things that you can set up with this. What would happen if you actually had Christian and the Patriarch win, and then what happens is you see Shane Taylor Promotions come down, you see the Learning Tree come down, or somebody else like a trios team come down and be like, okay, we're going to do it at Wembley Stadium. And I think you would do Learning Tree versus like the Patriarch, because obviously, they're both talked about trios. Or you put a trios together, like, you put Dalton Castle and the Maximum Male Models together, and because people want to see that. Or if you did like a over the rope match for the AEW, for the ROH Championship at Wembley Stadium. Or you said we're going to set up a tournament, we're going to have like 2 matches, Dalton Castle versus somebody, and the other female wrestlers like Nyla Rose and maybe Hikaru Shida versus somebody to get that. Or what would happen if you had Nyla Rose versus Mercedes Moné on this show? There's so many things that you could have done, really. And then again, and I want to reiterate this, there was some talk about AEW trying to sell out a $100,000 arena in Texas for next year. So if you want that shit to happen, you have to have a great show this year. And as I said, a Battle of the Belt show, an ROH Supercard of Honor, It's a week. It's like, a week away right now. There's only 3 matches. You usually do 12 matches. So it's gonna be something where Tony Khan's gonna rush everything together. That doesn't seem like a good show. You have Battle of the Belts, and I think that what happens at Battle of the Belts is every single time you do that, what happens is that most of the time you keep the title on a person. So, like I said, if you have the Blood and Guts pay per view, you could incorporate these 3 shows, and even like the MJF and Ospreay match onto that, and had a real big banger. So I really just think that this is why it's important to have Blood and Guts show. A lot of people would buy that pay per view. One year you have a stipulation match like this. This is right before. This is right before your Wembley Stadium show. So like Blood and Guts was with blood, sweat, and tears. Imagine if you sold that. Imagine if you had a pay-per-view in Texas, because another big issue with your pay-per-views that a lot of people don't like is that you keep going to California and you keep going to the New York area and you keep going to Chicago, really. So you just said, okay, well, this year we went to South Carolina. We also decided to go to Florida. We also decided to go to Texas with this Blood and Guts. And then we also decided to go to St. Louis, so... I really think that there is a lot of just, food for thought with this, with AEW, really, with just how, the Blood and Guts should be a pay-per-view. Like you could have either had it in Nashville or more so in Texas. So I just, I really hope Tony Khan listens to this, but Blood and Guts, Will Ospreay and MJF proves that Blood and Guts needs to be a pay-per-view.